Earlier on, Ali told us that Scotland's win over Denmark was their best in 20 years, while Northern Ireland held Italy to a goalless draw, sending the European champions into the playoffs. They had automatic, qualification in their sights, but they missed out after that draw in Belfast, and it means Switzerland go through because they were victorious over Bulgaria. England, though, they are heading to Qatar. It was an emphatic victory in the end for them last night. They only needed a point against San Marino, but they scored 10 in what was that very comfortable 10-0 victory. Topping the group then with 8 wins from 10 games, 26 points they amassed. The nature of the defeat has led to many questioning the validity of the qualification process, including the QPR striker Charlie Austin, who joined us earlier on.
Look, it's an exciting time for English football, but we've had it for years. We need to win something. That's the main thing, isn't it? It's all right. It's all right qualifying for the World Cup. Yeah, that's one stage, but we've got to win things. That's what we want.
Well, interestingly, earlier on we were speaking to Adrian Darman, and Ali, you posed the question to him about do people still need to be convinced by Gareth Southgate? Are you, Charlie, convinced that Gareth Southgate is still the right person to lead England? There's a doubt there.
It's not that there's a doubt, but we qualify all the time to the World Cups. Like, I'm not disrespectful. We do. We qualify all the time. We say, "Oh, great campaign. We've gone unbeaten." We're England. We should go unbeaten for qualifying to the World Cup. Just when we get there, we just need to have that edge. You can't question him. We got to the Euro finals. Hopefully, come what Qatar, we can go one better.
And Charlie, where do you stand on the pros and cons of teams like San Marino being in competition with the likes of England?
Yeah, I get everyone's got to play how I do, but surely is there some kind of qualification to get to a certain stage?
I hear you.
Because it's not fair. It's not fair on them. You know, it's great for them, and they play against superstars that England produce in other countries. But today, really, 10-0. You know what I mean? That's a training exercise. For Harry Kane, perfect. More goals, more on the tally, brilliant. More caps for people. Perfect opportunity for Connor to get a cap. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But come on. If we talk about people getting caps, look at Aaron Ramsdale. Played last night, made one save and punched the ball out from a corner.
Yeah. But then he'll always remember his debut, won't you? Regardless whoever it is. I still stand by it. Regardless of who you play, you're going to remember your debut, and you're never going to have that taken away from you. And Darren, I'm sure if you were called up to have played against San Marino in your first game, you're not going to go, do you mind if I sit this one out?
No, of course not, because you're thinking, automatically being a striker, you think it's San Marino goals.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Tammy Abraham was devastated sitting on the bench because he's thinking, after seeing Harry Kane get his 4, you know what I mean, you want a piece of that. So I get it in terms of kind of integrating players into the squad and giving them their chances, because international football is tough, it's difficult, there's a lot of pressure on it. Certainly when you play for England, I always felt like it was no pressure. There was no other pressure like it. But as the likes of Conor Gallagher, Ramsdale, players like that, getting them in their squad, giving them their caps, San Marino is probably the perfect opposition.
Emil Smith-Rowe, debut goal.
Exactly.
As well. And you actually saw it with Conor Gallagher. You felt like he was desperate to get a goal. He was desperate. Hit the post, didn't he, in one of his efforts? So, regardless of the opposition, I think scoring that first goal is still a very cherished moment. But then again, for Aaron Ramsdale, playing in goal is still a cherished moment, regardless of who they're playing, I'd have thought.
Whenever you put that shirt on, your international shirt, because that's kind of like... I'm trying to think of the word in terms of, that's kind of like validation that, okay, I've made it to a certain level, I've got my international debut, I'm good enough to play for my country. So it doesn't matter who that first cap comes against, the most important thing is that you get one.
Let's ask about both your thoughts on the job that Gareth Southgate has done for England. Ali, what do you make of it?
I think it's a terrific job. Honestly, I look at that England squad, Natalie, Bent, and it's as good a squad as I can remember seeing in a long, long time. With young talent. The young talent's phenomenal. It really is. And I know Charlie and I know all the boys are saying, well, we've got to win something. And I'm well aware, I have a laugh about it. You haven't won anything since 1966. I get that. At the same time, you've got to say, I think he's doing and has done a great job. World Cup semi-finals 2018, beating in penalties in the Euros. Obviously, you can go one step better. Of course you can. But you've got to say they were unlucky in the summer. I think he's got a good squad of players, and I think he's bringing through the youth. I think he's doing a great job. I really do.
Ali, let me ask you a quick question.
Sure.
Which generation do you think is better? Because I've asked this question quite a few times over the last few days in terms of the golden generation or this generation.
It's a funny one because you can only gauge it really on the success, and I would have to say, to contradict myself, this group of players look better, right, in terms of what they're achieving. However, I think Gerrard and Scholes would walk into the team. So I'm going to contradict myself a wee bit, Benty, but do you know where I'm on it? I just think the team that Gareth's got now and the players that he's got now, they don't have any fear in the respect that they've been to a semi-final. They've got lost, they lost the last final on penalties. They know how to do it. It's just the final wee thing about getting over the line. And you've got to say, many times we spoke about it, penalties it can be a little bit of a farce. MD can win penalties. This squad England have got just now are as good as any I can remember in a long, long time.
Well, what's your answer to your question?
Oh, honestly, I've gone back and forth that many times. I'm like a little bit like Ali, because in certain areas, I think if you took a look in terms of attacking areas, I think this squad here is loaded. Like it's busting out the seams in terms of.
I was going to ask you though. Don't you think this squad, there's just more depth?
Potentially, but then if you look at the centre half situation compared to that golden generation, Rio, Terry, Campbell, Carragher. I mean, the list is Ledley. The list is endless at centre half. But then you look at, for instance, the fullbacks in this generation. I mean, there's about 6 or 7, so it's difficult. But I think there's certain players in the golden generation that absolutely, of course, walk into this England team. But I like what Gareth Southgate's doing with this English side. I think the biggest compliment kind of you can pay him in terms of the job that he's done is how he's kind of brought the nation, the supporters and the players all back into one, if that makes sense, in terms of, I think there was a bit of a disconnect between international football, certainly in maybe sections of the media, some supporters. But if you look what Gareth Southgate's done, first and foremost, he's made football fans enjoy watching the national team again. They're going to games wanting to support the team. So I think you have to say
there's
a lot of that
still one or
is
two
him.
out there though, Benty. There's still one or two. I was listening last night coming back in the car from Hampden, and there's one or two callers on, still not convinced, which I find strange. I do find strange. I get you got to win things, but at the same time, surely you can see the improvement. And they're just an excellent team to watch.
Well, we talked about a little bit earlier on about the damned if you do, damned if you don't, and sometimes some of the team selections that Gareth Southgate opts for leads to criticism. You look at the Albania lineup, and I don't think many were particularly happy to see Jordan Henderson. I say many, some were not happy to see Jordan Henderson in the lineup. But then actually, when you see how he played against Albania, he was terrific and fully merited being in that squad. You mentioned you heard some listeners having their say. This is what Richard, who called the sports bar last night, had to say about Gareth Southgate.
I think that Southgate is essentially the international version of SOLSKJAER, as a Man United fan. And the reason I say that is because I think, he's got talented players, and I think, like Man United, England have made progress. But I think when it comes to the final hurdle, I think you need that kind of little bit of tactical nous, that little bit of something extra, get you over the line. And I think watching England in the Euros final against Italy, it showed that I think we're still lacking that.
Richard.
And I think, we are going in the right direction, but I think we're still a way off.
Okay, so that's Richard's take on the situation, and fully entitled to that view, of course. But when you look at the qualifying group for England, yes, okay, you had San Marino and Andorra in there. Obviously, that's just how the luck of the draw, and that's why England were able to get those points off those teams. But it wasn't easy against Poland. It wasn't easy against Hungary when they had that draw, obviously, most recently. Albania also, actually, as much as it was an easy victory in the end for England the previous game to San Marino, Albania was still in with a shout of being at Qatar 2022 before that defeat to England. So you can only play who you are drawn against, and England have gone through the competition unbeaten. You look at some of the other sides who are in the playoffs, who you might well have expected to have qualified automatically. Portugal, perhaps. You could even bring in Italy, of course, the European champions. There are other teams that have struggled, even struggled to qualify for tournaments of late. Italy didn't make it to the last World Cup. The Netherlands have struggled in major competitions recently. So in general, as much as there is some criticism towards Gareth Southgate, surely we do see progression with England ultimately, Darren. Yeah,
there is progression because, as you said there, World Cup semi-finals, the European competition, they get to a final, so there is progression. And as you said there, they seem to... But I do agree with what Charlie said in terms of we always qualify, which we do. But I do think Gareth's doing a fantastic job. And as I said, another thing you could say about him, the development of some of these young players as well, the way he's made the transition, certainly from, I know obviously club form's got a lot to do with it, but the transition from under-23s football, under-21s football, to the senior national team, the trust, I like that, what he does on the training ground in terms of, I think every day he brings another 2 up from the under 21s to train with the national team, then the next day another 2. Do you know what I mean? So he's trying new things that seem to be working. So I think there's real progression there. Of course, I get that at some stage England have got to win anything. But that's like saying then every manager we've had since 66 has failed because they haven't won anything either. But he I think that's the first final we've been in since 66. So you'd have to say that he's doing a far better job than certainly the last few managers we've seen anyway.
There's a text we just had in, Ali. I want your take on this one. Gareth doesn't have the tactical nous to win England a trophy. Made the same mistakes in the Euro final as he did at the World Cup semi-finals, going a goal up, sitting back on it, and then getting overrun in midfield. Do you see Gareth Southgate not having this tactical nous?
No, of course he has. Of course he's lost a final in penalties. Yeah. How can you say he's not got a tactical nous and you lose a game in penalties? The one disappointing one where I would accept was the semi-final of the World Cup, where I know if Harry scored, I think Harry's an opportunity to make it 2-0 after the brilliant free kick. That was a game that I really felt was there for the taking for England, and had a great World Cup. Having said that, I still wouldn't have fancied them to beat France in the final. But if you're talking about tactical now, listen, the guy's got beaten in a penalty shootout in the final. You know, but that's not tactics. That's a little bit unlucky, I think. And by the way, before we get any further, I also thought, you know, England were beaten by Italy in penalties, but I also thought Italy were the best team in the tournament.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
talkSPORT Breakfast with Laura Woods, Monday to Wednesday morning 6 till 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.